So yeah, my first question: which hip hop verse from any rap artist inspired your career as an MC?
Man, wow, that's a good question. Definitely going to be something off of Lord Finesse. Lord Finesse's Return of the Funky Man. Let me think about the album for a second. I think maybe Return of the Funky Man. Yeah, Return of the Funky Man off of Lord Finesse's album Return of the Funky Man. That song was like kind of the first rap song I ever heard that like really blew my mind, that made me think differently about rap music. And I was living in Florida, and at the time, rap music in America, pop rap music was just kind of corny shit mostly. And that was something I heard that was just like super clever. It just made sense to me. Like it really connected with me. I could see that sort of like skill in what he was doing, and I really loved it. And that was the record that made me want to be a rapper.
Nice.
There's other songs, verses and stuff that have like shaped me musically, stylistically or whatever, but that was the impetus to everything, and none of that other stuff would have mattered if that verse hadn't come along.
Good answer. I appreciate that. So how does your hip hop name represent your own personality?
I thought it was cool when I was 15 years old, and now I'm just sort of stuck with it.
That works. And then if you had to choose one dessert dish to describe your sound to someone who never listened to your music before, what would it be and why?
Pecan pie with ice cream. It's Southern, but everyone loves it. Southern as fuck, but everyone loves it.
And this is a question I wanted to ask, because I've seen on Twitter you sharing Insane Clown Posse stuff, when they're doing their charity. But when did you first become familiar with the music of Insane Clown Posse, and if offered the chance to tour with them, what would your first thought be, and why would you tour with them?
I became familiar with the music when I first started. Like, I had kind of always heard about them in the background of things. Like, they were sort of like, they were part of like a rap underground that I wasn't familiar with. Like, but I knew that they existed, like kind of back in the early 2000s. Because I was listening to everything that was underground rap, and I knew that they existed. And like, to be perfectly honest, like I looked at it, I thought it was silly, and I thought they were kind of just nuts. And then I heard more about it when I started touring in Michigan, like back like around like 2003. I'm sorry, scratch that, like mid-90s actually, probably when I first heard about them. Maybe something like that, like college, I think. And in 2000, I started to hear about it because I spent a lot of time in Michigan when I first started touring. And I never heard their music, but just sort of, like kind of discounted them. And didn't really pay attention to them. Because also I wasn't checking for anything that wasn't New York City. But then I started going to Detroit and like hanging out with people in Lansing and Ypsilanti and all these places in Michigan. And all these friends that were super into them. And I started like checking it out, and I was like, I still didn't totally get it. And then I played a show in Columbus, Ohio, and we were playing the small room at a venue that had like a big theater room as well, the same night that they were playing on their Hallow Wicked tour. And we asked the promoter if we could go to the show. And he was like, yeah, sure, man. He gave us tickets to the show. And honestly, it was one of the best concerts I've ever seen in my entire life, rap or otherwise. Like, they put on such an amazing show. They worked so hard for their fans. Everyone there was so nice to us. I mean, we stuck out like sore thumbs. We didn't look anything like anybody in there. Everyone saw us. And I think if we had gone to a lot of other shows like that for a lot of other bands with an equally devoted fan base and stuck out as clearly people that were not like initiated fans, we probably would have gotten a lot of evil eyes. And instead, everyone was super nice and super like excited that we were there and excited that we were excited. After that, I was like, my opinion on everything was cemented, and like I will defend that band forever as a result, because I know a lot of rap groups. I grew up watching a lot of rap groups that I love, going to see rappers that I admired, and they put on the worst shows and they treated their fans like shit in a way that ICP Truther fans, like, was a totally different experience, and it totally blew my mind. And if they asked me to tour, I would be like, yeah, in a heartbeat. I wouldn't turn it down for a second. I would love to tour with them. I would love to play the Gathering.
Well, that's a great answer, man. Wow, that's cool. You're able to see that How Wicked show. That was probably like what, early 90, 2000?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, yeah. Okay. They definitely had a lot of energy. They still do, but then, you know, it was like a whole new thing.
Well, no, that was later than that. That would be like 2000, later 2000. It would be later 2000s. I don't know the chronology of the thing, but it was definitely their Halloween Wicked tour. They were only doing like 5 days on a Halloween Wicked tour in the Midwest, doing like Detroit and like Columbus, Ohio, and like I think Youngstown, and like just it was like a small little run of dates. That's all I know. I'm not super sure about the year specifics.
Oh, that's all right. That's still cool history. And then someone who has never seen you live before, why should a hip-hop fan attend an Astronautalis show, and what makes your shows unique and original from other artists?
It's more like a punk show in a lot of aspects, but also it's a little bit like church without the God and a lot more whiskey. I really aspire to make it a show that is everyone gets involved with, that everyone sings at and everyone dances, even people that don't like to sing or dance at concerts. But I like it to be in a way that makes everyone feel included and involved. And yeah, so it's like a punk rock church show without God and a lot more whiskey and sweating.
Nice answer. And then, which record should a new fan start out with for your discography?
I think I start out with my latest record, Cut the Body Loose. I think it's my best record that I've ever made. It's the thing that I'm the most proud of. It's I think if I asked my fans, if I asked 100 of my fans which record to choose, I would get a different answer. There's people that love the first record. There's people that just think the second one is the best thing I've ever done. There's people that think the third one is the best. And so for me, the latest one is my favorite, and it's the one that I'm the most proud of. And I think especially if you're a rap fan, it's the most close to a rap record. None of my records are truly like traditional rap records in any sense, and that one is the closest there.
Great answer, because I do want to dissect the album. The real story behind naming Cut Your Body Loose and how it directly mirrors your own life.
Wait, sorry, say that again?
I was wondering the real story behind naming the album Cut Your Body Loose, what inspired it, and how it directly mirrors your own life.
So there's the term Cut the Body Loose is a term taken from New Orleans jazz funerals. And it's an New Orleans jazz funeral. You have a big, funeral inside a church, and then at the end of the church, the body of the casket is closed, and the casket is carried out of the church by the pallbearers. And outside of the church, there's a band waiting, and the band starts playing music as soon as the body comes out of the church. And the entire funeral walks out of the church, and the pallbearers carry the casket, and the band and the casket of the pallbearers and the funeral procession all walk down the street while the band plays really sad, traditional New Orleans jazz music. And then they walk to the graveyard, essentially. And there's a real important moment there where the body, pallbearers in the casket and the body continue on to the gravesite. But unlike a normal funeral, the family and everyone don't go watch the body get buried. And so this is the moment when you cut the body loose, when the funeral procession with the family and everyone and the band go one way, and the body, the casket, and the pallbearers go onto the graveyard to bury the body. And at this moment, when you cut the body loose, is when the music switches from really, really sad funeral music to "And the Saints Go Marching In," and the music switches from the entire feeling of the funeral switches from being one of an experience of mourning into like a celebration. And it becomes a party. And at this point, like everyone starts dancing in the street, and then people come out of their houses and join the funeral, even when they don't even know the person. And it just becomes this big party in the street. And that was a thing that really resonated with me. It's a tough time to be alive, I think, in a lot of ways. We're acutely aware of all the problems that are going on in the world. You look on your Twitter page, you watch the news or whatever, and it just seems like the world's going to shit. I don't think that the world is going to shit. I think that we're just more informed of all the shit. I think the world is full of the same shit that it's always been full of. We're just much more informed of it now because of technology. But I think it's really hard for us to deal with that, all of that shit. And I felt like that was a really valuable lesson to learn from learning about knowing Chad's funeral, that you sort of like pile up all the shit, and you pile up all the shit at the funeral, and then eventually you get to this point where you decide, okay, we're done being sad now. Now we dance and now we sing. Now we party. I feel like that's a really important moment to reach in your life, where you have to, everyone gets sad and everyone gets really stressed out, and the world can be a heavy place to live in, and you have to actively decide at some point that you're not going to be sad anymore. And I think it's a tough thing to do, but it's an important thing to do. And happiness is an actual like active choice. It's a political act to be happy. And so I really, the record itself is a great deal about that, about dealing with grief and sadness in the modern world, and finding a way to get to that point where you go, enough is enough, man. Fuck this. I'm not going to be sad anymore. I'm going to go out and get drunk with my friends and go dancing or whatever the fuck. I'm going to be happy now. And I think it's a really important point to get to. And it's been a real valuable lesson for me to learn.
Well, I appreciate that answer for breaking it down like that, man. And, on the album cover, is that a real black eye? I mean, if so, what happened? If not, then we can just skip the question. But if it is,
nah, it's not a real black eye. I'm gonna have my friend punch me for it. But then it got down to the wire, and it was just gonna be easier to get someone to do the makeup for it. But no, it is not a real black eye.
All right, then how would you describe the sounds within Cut Your Body Loose using only comic book character references?
Shit, I don't know that much about comics. So there's one, I know like a handful of comics. I don't know a lot about comics. I was never a comic guy. But I really got into this one comic book called Cerebus. And it's a graphic novel, and it's like one of the longest graphic novels. It was written since like 1976, and ended in 2013. And the thing that's really why I love Cerebus is about this like aardvark who's a barbarian. And it starts out as this kind of like basic like 1970s like barbarian comic. He's running around, he's swinging a sword, he's killing bad guys, he's talking to like girls with like metal breastplate armor and shit. And it looks just like kind of a 70s stupid barbarian comic. But if you keep reading it over the course of the 40 or 50 years that it existed, it becomes this really incredible piece of literature. And the characters evolve, and the story writing evolves, and the illustration evolves, and it becomes this like expansive, really challenging and thought-provoking sort of discussion of huge issues. And it starts out as something that just seems stupid and basic. But if you stick with it and you give it time, you realize it's brilliant. And it's a really like rewarding thing. The sound of my record on surface, I think a lot of my fans that have been with me forever discount it because it just sounds so much like a rap record versus my other records, which are sort of very diverse sounds. And I think people, and the lyrics I'm using much more of my kind of like traditional rap language on stuff. And so I think people often would listen to it and just think it was a rap record. But I think if you take the time and start to kind of dissect it, you'll see that there's a lot more there. At least that's what I hope. I want a therapist. Kind of a deep cut, but I'm going with it.
Right. Well, I appreciate the answer on that one too. I know that was a little hard for you to answer that. Kind of caught off guard. But for you, what was the most challenging moment when you were recording Cut Your Body Loose?
I mean, there's stuff on there. There's songs on there like it happens almost every record. There's always like I try to change my sound up for every record. I try to change the instruments I use, the musicians I use, the language that I use, what I talk about, like how much I sing versus how much I rap. I try to change everything. And the record on this was like kind of like the biggest departure for me. It was the biggest like leap in style for me. And there's a song called Psych, which when I recorded it came out exactly the way I wanted it to. It was a super hard-hitting rap song with like some banging ass horns, like real like borrowing a lot from like the sound of like Trick Daddy's music and stuff from the late 90s, early 2000s. And it just banged. It would knock really hard. And I'm like rapping my ass off on it. But when it was all said and done, like it kind of scared me because it was so different than anything that I had made. And it freaked me out. And I thought everyone, all my fans were going to hate me for making it. And I think some did. I think, like, I've seen people, like, make comments on the internet being like, oh, he's fucking changed or whatever the fuck. But that shit scared me, like, scared the fuck out of me as an artist. Like, cause that's, even no matter what, you make your music for yourself. You make your music because you're pursuing the art. You know, you want to, you have something you want to say. But at the end of the day, too, in the back of your mind, you want people to like it. Because I am making records for people to listen to. And that was a real terrifying prospect of, like, I felt like maybe I might just lose all my fans when I put that record out. It wasn't the case, thankfully. But it was definitely something I was scared of.
There's nothing wrong with exploring new ideas and bettering yourself, right? In new territory.
Yeah, you got to, man, or else you make the same fucking record over and over again. That's just boring.
Can't argue with that, man. Definitely. And you know, who? And in the song Psych, whom is it directly aimed at? You know, there's a lot of like, is it like trendy stuff? Is that what you're talking about against that?
It's more about like a general disappointment. It's a lot of stuff. It's about a general disappointment with the way that America is sort of panning out. I've toured all over America, and I'm about to, after this tour is done, I'm in the middle of a tour of all 50 states. And after this tour is done, I'll have played every state in America, most of them many times. And I've been lucky enough to tour in Europe, and now Australia and New Zealand, and I've been in the Middle East. And one of the things that was sort of shocking to me after touring in America for several years and then starting to go over to Europe is that, like, I see kids over in Europe, and particularly, like, I tour in Eastern Europe a lot, where people don't really have a lot going on for them in a lot of those places. In Lithuania, and Romania, Hungary, Slovakia, they don't have a lot going on for them. Because it's a tough place. A lot of those places just came out of a war, you know, like 20 years ago. And in those places, I found the most, like, exciting and adventurous people that were in much worse situations than most Americans are in, and not letting that defeat them, but letting that, like, empower them. Like, you know, them looking at their life and being like, man, this shit sucks. All right, let's fucking fix it. And either they're fixing it through political action or they're fixing it through creative action. But they were all, like, driven. Now, come back to America, and I just would hear people complain. People would, like, write me when I post a tour. We'd book a whole tour. We'd play, like, 2 months in America. We'd book a whole tour, and people would be like, why aren't you coming to my town? You know, and when I'm coming, like, probably 2 hours away from their town or whatever, you know. I'm like, motherfucker, I'm not coming to your town because no one got me a show in your town. Like, I'm not a fucking pop star. I can't just show up anywhere I want and play. Like, I need someone to book the show. But inversely, when I would play in Europe, people were like, hey, what will it take to get me to come to your town? And this is just sort of like one part of the thing and sort of discussed in that song. But it was just a general, like, kind of frustration with the attitude that's sort of starting to kind of wash over a lot of Americans. And it bums me out because I'm very proud to be an American. And I think we catch a lot of shit, and we give ourselves a lot of shit. But I also do think that, you know, some of that shit is deserved, and some of it's completely undeserved. And it was sort of me calling out just my neighbors, you know, kind of like the people around me, and being like, you guys are being ridiculous. And I'm guilty of it too. We're being ridiculous. We have it great by and large, and we need to, instead of looking at what we don't have and complaining about it, we should appreciate what we do have and then work our fucking asses off to make ourselves better, because we have no excuse.
Well, that makes the song a little more insightful.
Yeah.
And then, you know, why did you choose to name your song Kurt Cobain, Kurt Cobain?
Well, sort of, so that song is about, like, things that are sort of an illusion, illusions that we've allowed to exist, like and illusions that are sort of forced upon us. The illusion of power that police have in our lives, the illusion of control that government has over us, but also like sort of like more mundane things like the illusion that, you know, and I'm saying this as a humongous Nirvana fan. Like, I wore a black armband when Kurt Cobain killed himself when I was in middle school. I was a humongous Nirvana fan. But we have this illusion that he's like, that he was punk rock. But he wasn't punk rock. He was rich as fuck, and he was on a giant major label. It doesn't make him not a good musician, but it definitely makes him not punk. And that's sort of like a, you know, an important thing that I guess, like, remember is that, like, at the end of the day, like, things aren't always what they seem, and we grant them the power that we grant them. We allow Kurt Cobain to be a punk in our hearts because we just want him to be a punk in our heart, even though the motherfucker was a fucking millionaire, you know? And in the same sense, like, we allow cops to be cops because they're in charge of us because we let them, even though technically we pay their salaries and they work for us. And so that song is sort of just about this, like, reaching this point where you realize, like, enough is enough. I'm not going to get these people control over my life. I'm not going to take power over it. And using Kurt Cobain sort of just as an allegory for this larger issue.
Oh, wow. Huh. That's an interesting way to put it. And then, you know, what is running away from God exactly about?
It's about, like, so talking about getting back to the, you know, the seeing people in sort of bad situations make the most of the situations. It's about those people, about people that are sort of just seem to be born, like, with a sense of rebellion in them, or a sense of drive in them. And I'm not really talking about God in a strictly religious sense. I'm talking about just gods of all kinds, like governments and your fucking boss at work, or the cops around you, or whatever. Anybody that's trying to sort of exert some sort of power over you. There are some people that just sort of see that and go, yeah, no, I'm done with that. I'm not going to fall into that, and just are sort of born running away from that. They're born skeptics of religion, and they're born skeptics of government and that sort of thing. And so that song is about a couple of people, groups of people in New Orleans and in Bern, Switzerland, and in Slovakia that I met in my life that have really sort of inspired me in that way.
Interesting. And then, you know, I'm curious about this. When you were recording the album, do you have any behind-the-scenes stories that you would like to share when you were first recording Cut Your Body Loose?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that people may not, you know, necessarily understand is that, like, when I record records, I record them really quickly. For a lot of people, it's like, you know, going into the studio for a couple of days, coming out of the studio, going into the studio for a couple of days, going back in a month, tweaking things. But I do a lot of my work in advance, and I kind of work for, like, I do all that work sort of like preparing for a test almost. I get sort of all these ideas together. I get sort of everything really planned out. And then when I get into the studio, like, I knock it out, like, in 10 days. And so we recorded that record in 10 days. And it was just, like, 14 hours a day, nonstop, wake up, record until we're exhausted, take a break, have a drink, go back in, record, like, you know, just kind of work. And it's sort of like a factory for 10 days. And then it's done. And then I walk away from it. But I've done, on my second record, I spent 2 years, like, really recording it and tweaking it, and ended up almost driving me crazy, like, literally. And I don't ever want to do that again. And so I kind of go into this, like, attitude where I pile all the ideas together. I get all the inspiration together. I get the right people in the room, and we make it fucking work. And if it's not the right, if we don't have the right thing there, then we find another thing to fix it and replace it. And I really have grown to enjoy that, because a lot of times some of the best stuff comes out of a surprise. And ultimately the song Psych, I had all the verses for the song Psych, but couldn't find the right beat, and that beat sort of came as an accident. The guy who played synthesizers on all the record, he played synth and organ and piano on the record. He was just like, yeah, I got a couple of beats. And he played this one beat, and the actual, like, that, like, blah, 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 that, like, siren part of the beat was just the intro to this beat that he was playing. And we were like, man, we're just taking that, we took the siren part out of that and rebuilt a whole beat around it. And that wouldn't, you know, that just came out of this sort of, like, pressure accident kind of mode. And that's kind of, I really love recording that way. And that was really a super fun process. It was the most fun I've ever had making a record.
Wow. I got a few more questions left. This one I'm just curious about because, Halloween is coming up and, for some reason there's a whole clown hysteria going on right now. What is your opinion on that?
So on tour you sort of like kind of check in and out of the news, and sometimes you're really in touch with stuff, but it's totally possible too that like when you're touring, you just kind of miss stuff. And I'm not really sure what the I just saw, like, I keep seeing it, but don't know the exact context of the whole thing. Whatever the fuck it is, man, it's all it, I didn't bother to look it up because it just seemed like people being worried about nothing, which is generally most of the time. I feel like one of the biggest problems that we as a society, particularly the American, face is that most of the news, anything that is on the news, is news of people worrying about nothing, or worrying far too much about a small thing. And any concern about clowns, as far as I'm concerned, is probably no fucking concern. I may be wrong, but and I'm totally uninformed on this subject, but I'm just going off of past experience. So that is my official opinion on the situation.
Yeah, I was just curious because it's popping up all over. I think people are just some people are just copying other people, but then some people are probably just they just want to experience it, I guess. So I don't know. If you were about to die and you knew you were dying, and you only had one last album to listen to, what would it be?
Man, that's a question. Like I'm gonna start the album, and as soon as the album's done, I die.
Yeah, I guess if you want to put it that way.
Man, there's two approaches on this. Like I could just pick some stupid oh man. You know what? Like, a part of me wants to think that I would pick like some really awesome dance music and just like dance my fucking brains out and then die on the goddamn dance floor. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, like there's the record that I always go to when I have a problem in my life or something really heavy is going on in my life. I always listen to the album Blood on the Tracks by Bob Dylan. And it always feels like no matter what, like by the time the record's done, everything sort of just feels calmer in my head. Like when I'm really struggling with something mentally or something, I put on Blood on the Tracks and I just listen to it all the way through. And by the time it's done, I just how everything sort of seems like not solved, but just like my heart rate is settled down, my brain is calmed down. And I feel like in the end, I probably really would just want to listen to a record that would just really calm me down and make me ready to die. I think Bob Dylan, Blood on the Tracks is a real good go-to for that.
I appreciate the answer on that. I know that was a little hard to answer.
It's good. It's a good question, man.
You're welcome. How do you stay inspired to keep following your music dreams no matter what?
It's tough sometimes. I mean, the nature of this, like, creatively it's easy. Like, it's easy to find creative inspiration. But sometimes it's really tough to find, the creative part of this is only one small part of my life now. Like, now that it is a job, now that, like, I have, like, a band that tours with me, like, which are employees, now that, it's, now that I'm older, I'm married, like, it's a job. Finding creative inspiration is kind of the easiest part. It's tough sometimes because, like, I'm not rich, I'm not famous, like, I'm a working musician, I do this for a living, I pay my bills, but I'm not breaking in the dough, like, I'm working my ass off to make my living, and so it's tough to find, like, inspiration to keep going as a business, like, I always think of stuff creatively. I'm always thinking of song ideas and stuff. But sometimes it's really tough. Like if you have a bad show or a couple of bad shows or, whatever, like you don't make as much money on a tour as you thought you'd make. Sometimes it's really tough to kind of keep that motivation going. And I look around and a lot of times I look to other musicians. I talk to friends. I talk to my wife. I talk to my family. And, that at the end of the day, like, I think the thing that motivates me more than anything is that, like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, it's now at a point where it's bigger than my songs. It's bigger than the money that we make. It's bigger than the shows. This is my calling. Like, this is the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. And so, at the end of the day, I kind of just have to do it. And that's a pretty important thing, I guess.
Appreciate it. And any final shout-outs you could give before ending this interview? You know, I know the tour, you're hitting all 50 states, so everybody should come out and see that.
Man, I mean, yes, please, everyone should come out and see that. Come on out and fucking party with us. But I gotta say, honestly, man, I do a lot of interviews, and most of them are fucking bullshit. Most of them are the same 15 questions repeated over and over and over again. And honestly, this was some of the best questions I've ever been asked. This is a great interview. Like, I would go into most interviews now expecting to regurgitate the same crap every time, you know? And you asked a ton of questions that no one's ever asked. This was a great interview. I really appreciate it.
Well, hey, man, you're very welcome. I'll be at the Bozeman show. So
awesome, dude. That's the last one before we break for Thanksgiving. So let's have a good time.
Yeah, man, definitely. So,
come up and make sure you introduce yourself, all right?
What up?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, what were you saying? It kind of broke up a little bit.
Just make sure you introduce yourself at the Bozeman show, all right?
Yeah, I will for sure. And this is Faygoluvers.net signing off with the one and only Astronautalis. So all you juggalos who are not familiar with him, get familiar with his music. I know that some of you guys are down with Sadistic. So definitely peep his stuff because he's got a few tracks with Sadistic.
Whoop, whoop, motherfucker.